do you agree that a president must follow a court order and the Supreme Court's word is final? Or is the Supreme Court's word only final as far as the lower courts are concerned?
Senator Leahy, I'm glad to have the opportunity to clarify from our conversation. First, I know that both Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh said that no man is above the law, and I agree with that. But I conversed with Senator Lee yesterday about Federalist 78, which says that courts have neither force nor will. In other words, we can't do anything to enforce our own judgments. And so what I meant in the conversation with you is that as a matter of law, the Supreme Court may have the final word, but the Supreme Court lacks control over what happens after that. The Supreme Court and any federal court has no power, no force, and no will, so it relies on the other branches to react to its judgments accordingly.
I remember as a young law student having lunch. Our honor society at Georgetown was able to have lunch with the members of the Supreme Court. I sat with Justice Hugo Black. He told me what happened with Brown versus Board of Education. And the court knew that was going to be a very, very tough case. And what did they do? They waited till they had a unanimous opinion because they knew that the president would have to, and the Congress would have to enforce their law. So let me ask you this. Of course, the Supreme Court has no army. They have no force, but they do have the force of law. And is a president who refuses to comply with a court order a threat to our constitutional system of checks and balances?
Senator Leahy, I think the example of Brown is a perfect one in this instance because the Supreme Court in Brown, of course, held that segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause. That was the law, but as you know, there was resistance to that decision. And so it wasn't until the National Guard came in and forced Governor Falbus to allow desegregation that it could happen because the Supreme Court couldn't do so itself. And in Cooper versus...
I understand that, but they made the order. And could a president, if a president refused to follow what they had said, would that be a threat to our constitutional form of government?
Well, as I said, the Supreme Court can't control whether or not the president obeys. Abraham Lincoln once disobeyed an order during the Civil War of a circuit court. So a court can pronounce the law and issue a judgment, but it lacks control over how the political branches respond to it.
Well, then let me ask you a specific that has come up. President Trump claims he has an absolute right to pardon himself. Now, for 200 years, the Supreme Court has recognized the common law principle that nobody can be a judge in their own case. I had to go way back and reread Calder versus Bull to see that. But would you agree, first, that nobody is above the law? Not the president, not you, not me. Is that correct?
I agree. No one is above the law.
And does a president have an absolute right to pardon himself for a crime? I mean, we heard this question after President Nixon's impeachment.
Senator Leahy, so far as I know, that question has never been litigated. That question has never arisen. That question may or may not arise, but it's one that calls for a legal analysis of what the scope of the pardon power is. So because it would be opining on an open question when I haven't gone through the judicial process to decide it, it's not one on which I can offer a view.
Okay, and so, but you were willing to say that no person, not you, not me, not a president, is above the law. I find your answers somewhat incompatible, but those are your answers. You have a right to say what you want.